Good morning and happy Wednesday. Today we are continuing to read Beverly Cleary's book, Dear Mr. Henshaw, illustrated by Paul O. Zielinski. We left off and today we're going to start reading Tuesday, March 6th. Today, Barry asked me to come home with him to see if I could help him rig up a burglar alarm for his room, because he has a bunch of little sisters and stepsisters who get into his stuff. I thought I could, because I had seen an alarm like that in one of his electricity books from the library. Barry lives in a big old house that is sort of cheerful and messy, with little girls all over the place. As it turned out, Barry didn't have the right kind of battery, so we just fooled around looking at his models. Barry never uses directions when he puts models together, because the directions are too hard and spoil the fun. He throws them away and figures out how the pieces fit by himself. I still don't know what to write for young writers, but I was feeling so good I finally wrote to Dad to thank him for the $20 because I had found a good use for it, even if I couldn't save it all toward a typewriter. I didn't say much. I wonder if Dad will marry the pizza boy and his mother. I worry about that a lot. Thursday, March 15th. This week, several kids turned up with lunchboxes with burglar alarms. You know that song about the hills ringing with the sound of music? Well, you might say our cafeteria rang with the sound of burglar alarms. The fad didn't last very long, and after a while, I didn't even bother to set my alarm. Nobody has robbed my lunchbox since I set it off that day. I never did find out who the thief was, and now that I stopped to think about it, I am glad. If he had set off the alarm when my lunchbox was in the classroom, he would have been in trouble, big trouble. Maybe he was just somebody whose mother packed bad lunches, jelly sandwiches on that white bread that tastes like Kleenex. Or maybe he had to pack his own lunches and there was never anything good in the house to put in them. I have seen people look into their lunches, take out the cookies and throw the rest in the garbage. Mr. Fridley always looks worried when they do this. I'm not saying robbing lunchboxes is right. I am saying I'm glad I don't know who the thief was, because I have to go to school with him. Friday, March 16th. Tonight, I was staring at a piece of paper, trying to think of something to write for young writers when the phone rang. Mom told me to answer because she was washing her hair. It was Dad. My stomach felt as if it was dropping to the floor, the way it always does when I hear his voice. "How are you doing, kid?" he asked. "Fine," I said, thinking of the success of my burglar alarm. "Great." "I got your letter," he said. "That's good," I said. His call took me so by surprise that I could feel my heart pounding, and I couldn't think of anything to say until I asked, "Have you found another dog to take Bandit's place?" I think what I really meant was, "Have you found another boy to take my place?" "No, but I asked about him on my CB," Dad told me. "He may turn up yet." I hope so. This conversation was going no place. I really didn't know what to say to my father. It was embarrassing. Then Dad surprised me. He asked, "Do you ever miss your old dad?" I had to think a minute. I missed him all right, but I couldn't seem to get the words out. My silence must have bothered him because he asked, "Are you still there?" "Sure, Dad. I miss you," I told him. It was true, but not as true as it had been a couple of months ago. I still wanted him to pull up in the front of the house in his big rig, but now I knew I couldn't count on it. "Sorry, I don't get over your way more often," he said. "I hear the sugar refinery in Spreckles is closing down." "I read about it in the paper," I said. "Is your mother handy?" he asked. "I'll see," I said, even though by then she was standing by the phone with her hair wrapped in a towel. She shook her head. She didn't want to talk to Dad. "She's washing her hair," I said. "Tell her I'll manage to send your support check sometime next week," he said. "So long, kid. Keep your nose clean." "So long, Dad," I answered. "Drive carefully. I guess he'll never learn that my name is Lee and that my nose is clean. Maybe he thinks I'll never learn that he drives carefully. He doesn't really. He's a good driver, but He speeds to make time whenever he can avoid the highway patrol. All truckers do. After that, I couldn't get back to thinking about young writers, so I picked up Ways to Amuse a Dog and read it for the 1000th time. I read harder books now, but I still feel good when I read that book. I wonder where Mr. Henshaw is. Sunday, March 17th. Today is Saturday, so this morning I walked to the butterfly trees again. The grove was quiet and peaceful, and because the sun was shining, I stood there a long time, looking at the orange butterflies floating through the gray and green leaves and listening to the sound of the ocean on the rocks. There aren't as many butterflies now. Maybe they are starting to go north for the summer. I thought I might write about them in prose instead of poetry, but on the way home, I got to thinking about Dad and one time when he took me along when he was hauling grapes to a winery, and what a great day it had been. Tuesday, March 20th. Yesterday, Miss Neely, the librarian, asked if I had written anything for the Young Writer's Yearbook, because all writing had to be turned in by tomorrow. When I told her I hadn't, she said I still had 24 hours, and why didn't I get busy? So I did, because I really would like to meet a famous author. My story about the 10-foot wax man went into the wastebasket. Next, I tried to start a story called The Great Lunchbox Mystery, but I couldn't seem to turn my lunchbox experience into a story because I don't know who the thief or thieves was or were, and I don't want to know. Finally, I dashed off a description of the time I rode with my father when he was trucking the load of grapes down Highway 152 through Pacheco Pass to a winery. I put in things like the signs that said steep grade, trucks use low gear, and how Dad downshifted, and how skillful he was handling a long, heavy load on the curves. I put in about the hawks on the telephone wires and about the high peak where Black Bart's lookout used to watch for travelers coming through the pass so he could signal to Black Bart to rob them, and how the leaves on the trees along the stream at the bottom of the pass were turning yellow, and how good tons of grapes smelled in the sun. I left out the part about the waitresses and the video games. Then I copied the whole thing over in case neatness counts and gave it to Miss Neely. Saturday, March 24th. Mom said I had to invite Barry over to our house for supper because I have been going to his house after school so often. We had been working on a burglar alarm for his room, which we finally got to work with some help from a library book. I wasn't sure Barry would like to come to our house, which is so small compared to his, but he accepted when I invited him. Mom cooked a casserole full of good things like ground beef, chilies, tortillas, tomatoes, and cheese. Barry said he really liked eating at our house because he got tired of eating with a bunch of little sisters waving spoons and drumsticks. That made me happy. It helps to have a friend. Barry says his burglar alarm still works. The trouble is, his little sisters think it's fun to open his door to set it off. Then they giggle and hide. This was driving his mother crazy, so he finally had to disconnect it. We all laughed about this. Barry and I felt good about making something that worked, even if he can't use it. Barry saw the sign on my door that said, "Keep out, Mom. That means you." He asked if my mom really stays out of my room. I said, "Sure, if I keep things picked up." Mom is not a snoop. Barry said he wished he could have a room nobody ever went into. I was glad Barry didn't ask to use the bathroom. Maybe I'll start scrubbing off the mildew after all. Sunday, March 25th. I keep thinking about Dad and how lonely he sounded and wondering what happened to the pizza boy. I don't like to think about Dad being lonesome, but I don't like to think about the pizza boy cheering him up either. Tonight at supper, beans and franks, I got up my courage to ask Mom if she thought Dad would get married again. She thought a while and then said, "I don't see how he could afford to. He has big payments to make on the truck, and the price of diesel oil goes up all the time, and when people can't afford to buy houses or buy cars, he won't be hauling lumber or cars." I thought this over. I know that a license for a truck like his costs over $1,000 a year, but he always sends my support payments. I said, "Even if he is late sometimes." "Yes, he does that," agreed my mother. "Your father isn't a bad man by any means." Suddenly, I was mad and disgusted with the whole thing. Then why don't you two get married again? I guess I wasn't very nice about the way I said it. Mom looked me straight in the eye. Because your father will never grow up, she said. I knew that was all she would ever say about it. Tomorrow, they give out the young writer's yearbook. Maybe I will be lucky and get to go have lunch with the famous author. We're going to stop there for today. Over to our questions. So question 1 says, what does the phrase keep your nose clean mean? Lee's dad tells him that. Keep your nose clean, kid. What do you think that means? Question 2. Why do you think Lee didn't open up to his dad on the phone? So he seemed very shy, very hesitant on opening up about how he was feeling about everything. Why do you think Lee did not open up to him on the phone? Question 3. Lee goes to the butterfly garden to relax. This is almost like a very quiet place for him to kind of regroup his thoughts. Where is your quiet place? Why do you like it? What is so special about it? So share with us your special place, your quiet place, and why you chose that. And last question. Do you think Lee really meant what he said? I don't want to know. He actually said that a couple times in this reading. He said, I don't want to know. I'm glad I don't know who the thief is. Do you really think he means that? And I would like you to explain your answer. Make sure that you have prepared your responses and your explanations for our discussion tomorrow, which is Thursday.